Welcome to the SAFeTY Chronicles, exploring how to keep people and pets safe from the cycle of interpersonal violence. I am your host, Allie Phillips, founder and CEO of Sheltering Animals and Families Together, the SAFeTY Program, a nonprofit organization working with domestic violence shelters to eliminate the pet housing barrier to safety. As the founder, I have led the global movement in helping domestic violence shelters create on-site pet housing while elevating the criminal justice response to how animal abuse links to crimes against people. I am a former prosecuting attorney, internationally recognized legal expert and public speaker, award-winning author, and advocate for protecting vulnerable victims. In this podcast, we will explore how and why animals are harmed in the cycle of family violence and the human-animal bond that keeps victims in harm's way with their pets. Guest speakers and I will share strategies for shelters and professionals working to safeguard survivors, why pet-inclusive sheltering is life-saving, and safety tips for those who need help. None of the content will be graphic. If you are in harm's way, please contact your nearest domestic violence shelter or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the SAFeTY Chronicles. So I'm here with Rudy, who is always sitting here on the back of my chair. That's his thing that he does. And I've got a real treat for us today. So I have Lauren Wilkie, who's the executive director of SAFeLight in Hendersonville, North Carolina. And she is going to talk about their new pet housing program that they have on site. So Lauren, I have to tell you, I was super excited when I saw the email from you that your shelter opened your doors to people with pets in December of 2023.
Yes, for brand new.
Oh my gosh. So before we dive into that, before I get like super excited and, go off the rails here, I'd love to know a little bit about you. Like, how
Sure.
long have you been with SAFeLight?
Absolutely. So I have been with SafeLight for 4 years. I've been doing nonprofit work for 22 years. I am a licensed clinical social worker and a licensed advanced practice social worker. So for those who don't know what all the letters mean, it just means I can practice therapy, but even more importantly, I'm also advanced trained with a lot of years of supervision to run nonprofits the right way. So really good thoughts of being a partner in the community, bigger picture focus, how to use data and statistics to grow your program the right way and follow the mission.
Wonderful. And tell us a little bit about Hendersonville, because you're near the South Carolina border. Do I have that
We're
correct?
right on the border.
Okay.
We're right in Western North Carolina, so very close to South Carolina. It's just one county over, above Greenville, Spartanburg area, and so we're just right there between the Carolinas. I myself am a native of South Carolina, but have been here now for 4 years.
Okay. And how big is Hendersonville? Is it
Oh,
considered a
it's small.
small, mid?
Shockingly, the census calls us suburban, but we're only about 130,000 residents in the county. So I'd say fairly small community.
Okay. All right. Now, are you able to share, before we get into the pet housing, are you able to share a little bit about like the physical setup of your shelter? Like,
Sure.
are you set up more like as a home or as an apartment complex? I know that every shelter is so different in how they're set up. So are you able to share what your setup is
Absolutely.
like?
So our setup has a couple of advantages compared to some that I've worked with and consulted with in past years. One is that we are really great proximity to other businesses, so it's not rural, which makes it safer. Our police can respond very fast. It's really connected versus disconnected, or if you will, hidden off in the woods or tucked in a neighborhood. So it is not a house or apartment style. It's our communal living shelter does have 13 different rooms. We have a 40-bed capacity. We do not share families in rooms. So if there's a family with one or multiple children, they always have their own room. And so every room is a little bit different size. The largest we really could house in one space would be a family of 7 or 8.
Okay. Wow. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So you opened your doors to family pets in December of 2023. What prompted you to do that?
Great question. So our shelter turns 40 this year. I guess we got old enough to be able to do it. So at 39, we said, I think we're old enough to have some pets. And of course, I'm just joking with that. So for years, we have partnered with our local humane society, being Blue Ridge Humane Society, to shelter pets. And that means they would either foster or have them at their location, which is over a 10-minute drive away. So it's not hugely accessible to get there for our residents or clients. And it's not, with the fostering, you don't get to visit with your pet while they're not with you. So it really creates, it still continues to be an option for those we serve, but it doesn't allow those who are already having to flee all of their space, all of their what they know, and come into another space here, while we try to create such a loving environment that has all the things you would need. It still pulls you away from what you're used to. And our goal was to not add one more barrier, keeping our survivors, our kids, from accessing this care. So we wanted to just see how we could reduce that barrier. We were getting a couple of calls a year for cats and dogs wanting to come in our facility. And we wanted to see, with our space, which we own, how could we make it happen? And it took a couple of years of planning.
Yeah, and everything that you just said is really the foundation of the SAFeTY program. It's recognizing that, pets are part of the family, and when you're fleeing, a violent situation, and you're literally leaving everything or almost everything behind, having your pet with you can be healing. It helps with resiliency. It helps with recovery. It helps in so many ways. And while it's fantastic to have an off-site housing program like what you had with Blue Ridge, did you encounter, any residents or clients that said, I do not want my pet off-site. I need to have them with me?
Absolutely. And so we were partnering with a neighboring, and we still do partner with a neighboring county that has had some dog and cat kennels on site now for a couple of years. They were one of the ones who helped guide us along with others through the process. And so we utilized them for the ones who were in know with us, while recognizing it's not okay for our county not to meet the need of our residents. And how could we bring that to our county to not have to send our residents out of the county, especially when they have kids? But even some still saying no, because it wasn't an option to switch counties, maybe because of the school district changes. So we had people refuse the options we had because we had that barrier by not having the housing here.
Right. And what shelter was guiding you through the process?
We're safe in Transylvania County.
Oh, okay. Oh,
continues to be a partner with us.
Yeah, they were one of the early shelters that joined this program. My gosh, I'm trying to think of how far back they've gone.
They've only had their kennels on site a couple of years. I'm going to say 4 years.
Okay, yeah, they go back quite a while. So that's amazing. That's so great
and we learned a lot from them of what not to do. So things they said, we wish we hadn't done this. Don't do that. Like materials, they said don't use wood, but they had wood donated, but wood holds smell.
Yeah.
So it was just a great partnership to learn from others.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. And one thing when I'm giving presentations about the SAFeTY program is I always say it's not for you all to become animal housing experts. You have your job to do. You've got enough on your plate. But when you can have those partners, whether it is with another domestic violence shelter that's done this, or Blue Ridge, Humane, like they can answer those questions and say, hey, don't do this, or give this a try. And it just can make the process easier. And that, I think, is so helpful, is to try to
Absolutely.
simplify things as best as possible.
I wouldn't call it simplified. Even having copies of all the policy procedures, best practices, guiding resources out there, it still is a very complicated process, but it definitely helps to have those to support through and know who to call next, who to contact with, right down to Blue Ridge, knowing who we had to work with for city water approval, for our sewer requirements. So it made the process a little bit faster, but it was still very complicated. So I don't want to hide that it's not a difficult process. It does take years to make it happen, but it does make it better to do it with partners that know what they're doing.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting because every jurisdiction is different. Some jurisdictions take years, and having those partnerships can expedite the process because you don't know what you don't know. And so they can help you with, hey, you need to look into this. And, these are the things that, that we cover in the SAFeTY Startup Manual, just the things to think about. And then there are other jurisdictions, which I wish everybody was like this, that can just, bam, they're just set up instantly.
Well, we could have banned and just set up. It's just because we have no license or regulations around our shelter. We could have if we went through the insurance program that the Humane Society uses. It could have taken longer. But what took us so long was doing it the right way, setting up policy procedures, partnerships, contracts, and then just the build. I mean, once we had the architect plans in place and the build and all the equipment was still 6 months.
Yes. So let's talk about that. What does the pet housing look like at your shelter?
Oh, well, you've seen videos and pictures, right?
I have.
I'm hoping you could show them. So ours is quite unique, and we went through 3 different meetings and thought processes of where we would put it in the space we had. So we had to work with what we had. And so we looked at outside. It was going to be too small, a little bit less safe, and harder to climate control. Then we looked in our lobby space, which we had enough space to retrofit the area, but there's going to be so much noise from people coming in and out, so much disruption, and we worried about people getting too involved with pets when they needed to stay out of the way and not be in the space of the owner and their pet. So it was this magic unicorn of happenings that occurred. There was some national ARPA dollars that came through the pipelines through the state that could only be used for shelter retrofitting if you owned your facility. Ding, ding, ding. And so what it allowed is for us, we were able to move our communal dining space to a different floor in our building. And by doing that, it opened up the old communal dining space to be whatever we needed it to be next. We had this space that was going to be available. And it wasn't until I was sort of down there one day looking around, I had this, oh my gosh, this is where it should be moment. And it wasn't planned. It wasn't, just sort of kind of dominoed. So as you go into this space, which is on a quiet, different level on its own, and that level includes a different space that we retrofitted that has our computer lab and our community engagement space and our childcare space, with a separate entrance. And then it's keypadded separately that through the shelter can only access the kennel space. So as you come down through the elevator or the stairs, this space has a large, beautifully decorated, colorful pet den that you walk into. So imagine you've got a den, a couch, a TV, storage spaces that are locked with our different animal belongings, and then lots of toys. And yeah, that's actually the cat den.
Yep, I'm going to share a couple of photos as you're talking.
So, and then you've got separately a cat den with 4 cat spaces. And then we have separately a dog space that's got a door for quiet. And in that space, it has 3 dog kennels, which are about 12 by 10. So it's just really, yeah, that's the dog kennel.
Mhm.
So outside of that door is it opens up to the doggy den space so that family can come down and have a really quiet additional space to be with their pet. So it allowed for us as we were new into the project to have a separate space quiet for these pets, but it
Mhm.
also allowed for our pets to be separate from our shelter, which can be very noisy and a lot going on. It can be very traumatizing for the pets. So while the pets aren't actually on the floor with the other clients, they have their own space separate that their owners get to go into and be with them.
Yeah, and it just looks like such a comfortable space
Yeah,
that,
it's
I mean, they can
bright,
just,
cozy.
yeah, it's, I mean, and that's the thing. Their pets are on site. They may not be, physically in their rooms with them, but I mean, they can just take a
They
little
could be with
walk.
them all day. If they wanted
Yeah.
to be down there the whole time that the space is open, just like any of our communal spaces, unless there's an emergency, it's only closed from 11 p.m. to I think it's 5 or 6 a.m. So other than that, you could be down there all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And are you doing anything in the pet housing area to calm the pets, like classical
Oh,
music and
yes, they
things?
have their very own pet sound machines. There's a dog one and a cat one. Additionally, they both have TVs in their space. So if the owner wants to put TV on, we know cats really love the sound of voices. So they can choose to put on the cat's favorite TV station.
Yeah. Oh yeah, my cats love the Animal Planet station or a good Hallmark movie. It's
You
like,
can
okay.
put it on for them as long as you want. It's
Yeah.
fine. And so it's nice having that separate, quiet space. It's not interrupting the flow of the
Yeah.
other hustle and bustle of our shelter. And that also gives the owner an additional space to go have some respite time and be away and have a nice spot to be with their pet.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, just to go and decompress and just, yeah, just have that human animal bond, which there is just something, like I have 3 cats, and if I'm having a tough day, they turn into therapy cats. Like they
Yeah.
just know they're just unconditional love, and they're not causing problems. They're just here to help. And
Yeah.
that's what I
Really
love.
important. It's great. And
Yeah.
what you're not seeing in the picture is why did it take 6 months to do it? Just looks like some equipment. Well, you're not seeing the trenches we had to dig out to make the sewer lines and the water flow so we could spray down the space. You're
Yeah.
seeing that covered. So, we had to dig into concrete and then re-pour and retrofit. But just the doggy kennel doors alone, for those 3 spaces were a little over 10 grand.
Okay.
And just the 4, or I think it's 2, but it's 4 cat spaces, which has the bedroom and then the bathroom space. Those were 8 grand for the 4, so about 4
Yeah.
for 2. So
Yeah.
that's just the sleeping equipment, right?
Right. Right. So how many pets have you housed since you opened this in
Double
December?
what we anticipated so far. So we're at 21 currently. And we're just cats and dogs. And
Okay.
our shelter capacity has stayed high or to almost capacity since we opened the kennels, which wasn't expected. We didn't expect this many pets, and we didn't expect our numbers to be so high around the pets. So we used to average, I'd say in the last couple of years, around 25 a day being our shelter capacity. We've been high 30s, so 38 today.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I talk with the shelters about, is that you're you're going to tap in to people in need
Yep.
that were in hiding. Like
Yep.
they weren't reaching out to you because they did not want to be separated from their pets. And as soon as you say,
Absolutely.
hey, we now have pet accommodations, you're going to help the people who really were in hiding and needed the help the most.
Absolutely. And we've
Yeah.
seen it. It's just been double what we anticipated. And we always anticipate higher than we think, just based on the data we collect, but it was double that high rate. We thought we'd be at 10 to 12 by now, and we're at 21.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. So when you were first starting to think like, hey, we should probably open up our doors to pets and help clients that have pets. What concerns or what questions did you have initially that you were able to get around? You were able to create a solution?
Oh yeah. So insurance was the biggest because it took so long to get the answers. I'm going to say working with our current insurance provider and others that are pet friendly, just getting all the information together took nearly a year because of how long it took people to respond as
Oh,
we were
yeah.
gathering that. So just that was such a long process once we were a yes, just to get the insurance, and to a point where we almost did our kennel under Blue Ridge Humane Society so that we could do it under their insurance, which would have caused further delays because it has to be, then it has to follow the state requirements for,
Mhm.
so we didn't go down that pipeline, but we thought about it and it could be something people do to get around insurance since they already have it. But that just took a lot of time, more than anticipated. A couple other things, of course, space and size. I didn't anticipate the dog kennels having to be so large.
Mhm.
Because you picture it's not crates, they're little mini apartments, right? So the space that we would need for that, we worked with I'm forgetting their name with Red Rover, but a group called Greater Good. Help me out. It's the
Yeah, greater good
Greater,
charities.
yes,
Yeah.
they came out and did a drawing with us, and we were able to work with that, but then work with a local architect to make it meet our needs and our space. So we worked with two separate architects on the build, which took a lot of time.
Yeah.
But was great because both architects did it pro bono with us. So Greater Good did it pro bono to help us get started, and then our local architect that worked with our local construction team helped us do it to fit, some switching that we wanted to make, which was just great. Um, just working through our partnership and our contract with Blue Ridge and making sure we had a really good letter of agreement together in that process and who would do what. And we have them in a federal grant with us contracted for 3 years as a subcontractor. So they get paid for their staff time. They helped us develop a lot of the forms we use for intake, which has just been really good. So all of that was before starting. So just a lot of steps.
Wow. Well, now that you have welcomed more cats and dogs than you expected, have any issues come up, and how have you resolved them so that you can
Yeah.
keep a successful program?
There's always going to be things you can't expect, or, I'm always we learn as we go, we figure it out, and you can't have a policy for everything, but we'll add it as we go. So we're being in a downtown location that's around everything, which is great. There's less green space, so helping our clients navigate where it's okay to use the bathrooms and not get our neighbors upset for their dogs using the bathrooms was something we had to navigate. So we made maps and routes, and even we now take our residents around and show them and do sort of not just like here's where to go, but we can walk you through that process. When we were working with Blue Ridge, one of the things in their paperwork we changed after a couple of months of trial and error was they had regulations in their paperwork that had the owners give up what I can't remember the exact wording of it. I have to go back, but the owner basically had to give them ownership of the pet while they were in the shelter with us and
Yeah.
then give it back. We were able to do away with that, which I think is a lot softer for someone coming in. It just didn't, even though we weren't taking the pet, it didn't sound good. It's a social worker. It was sort of an icky feeling to say, okay, well, the pet's now sort of in the care of Blue Ridge until you leave with us. And I'm glad that was something we kind of changed through the process and
Yeah.
through our building with them. So one thing you don't really think about, but the Humane Society doesn't deal with clients; they deal with pets. So they had to learn how to deal with people while we were having to learn how to deal with pets. Guess which is harder?
Yeah.
Right? So we've been teaching them how to deal with people and them
Yeah.
with pets. And so one of the things at first is they had policies where the pets couldn't be the owners couldn't be present during vaccines, neutering, things like that were offered because that was part of their process. But we were able to soften that and make it where clients could be part of that process over some of them getting used to dealing with people. So
Mhm.
that's been fun learning. We had a case with a client who was inappropriate with her pet significantly, and we worked with how to work with our animal control to make a report. And what does that process look like, and figuring out through the right people to contact. Turns out there's both city and county animal control to check in when we think that there's a threat of harm to a pet. We're used to this with how we do this process with people, so learning it for pets was a little bit different.
Mhm.
And in the end, it was really interesting. Both the city and county person, the day we needed them, were on vacation, so there was nobody available and nothing we could do.
Mm. Oh, wow.
Which we were able to give that feedback. But in hindsight, what we learned is we wouldn't have had enough for them to act on anything. The owner would have had to give over their pet, which was highly unlikely. So it was frustrating to know we thought this pet was in danger, but not enough. But we deal with that with people a lot, that a lot of times we can't do anything until someone actually gets hurt. So just because we sensed a threat of harm, the animal was being neglected, it wasn't enough that anybody could have done anything. And the client actually decided to leave with her pet, which was really hard on our team,
Yeah.
and very upsetting. So we hope maybe they'll come back and we can give it another try, but we think that owner wasn't ready to be a pet owner. So that was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you had discussions with Blue Ridge Humane about
Oh, yeah.
coming in and doing like humane education to the clients about how to properly care for a pet? Because there are
They
some
do.
people that have literally never had that modeled for them.
They do, and they do an incredible job and come
Good.
during Monday through Friday days. They come almost immediately when they need them. They're incredible, do great care. But this was a client with so much mental health, none of that. There's nothing that would have been received.
Mm, yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
tough. It's hard for us because we realize there's nothing we could do to help that pet at this time.
Yeah, and I understand that frustration, as a former prosecutor, you got to work with the laws, and every state is different, every jurisdiction is different. You can have county laws, city ordinances, plus you have your state laws.
Yeah.
It can be very, very confusing to navigate that, and to get the action that you want and understand the level that it
Yes.
takes for law enforcement or animal control to get involved. And yeah, so that's
But on a flip
yeah.
side, we had a pet who was neglecting her cats. We were able to do intense case management, both with us and with Blue Ridge Humane Society. And we have seen such a 360 with that pet owner and her animal care over just a couple of months. And we stepped in and assist kind of when the pets need a little bit extra while they're here. So even the dog that was being neglected, we walked, we watered, we checked on the pet. But she's been able to learn and get that, because we have to recognize we're dealing with people with trauma brain, and
Right.
our level of care may not be their level of care, and they might not understand or have ever been taught what those pets need. And she just needed some guidance, but she was willing. And so there's the difference.
Yeah.
She was able to work through that, but it still is a lot more work on the staff, and it's stressful along the way. But we're thrilled now that she got it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, celebrate those little wins, and hopefully
Absolutely.
that'll offset the situations where the client does pick up and leave with their pet and you're left, you know, feeling bad, feeling a little heartbroken,
Yeah.
for that. But yeah, I mean, but it's amazing what you're doing. I mean, the lives that you are saving by doing this is
I mean,
something that is it's hard to quantify it. And I used to say that as a prosecutor, by handling a one case in a particular way, I don't know how many people I just saved
yeah.
by handling this case. And by you bringing a client in with their pets, you have no idea how you have saved them other than just doing what you're doing, which is amazing.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's lovely when I get to hear the kids playing with their pets, which
Oh,
I got to hear
yeah.
yesterday as I was packing up some books in another space down there. I could hear the kids just playing. and enjoying and talking, and it's just important that the kids still get to have some sense of normalcy.
Yes, yes, normalcy when everything around them is just, chaos and motion. Yeah, for sure. So what advice do you have for shelters who, you know, they know that animal abuse links to domestic violence, and they know that there's potential clientele in their community that have pets, but they just haven't taken that step to really look at it. What are some pieces of advice that you would have for them so that they can take this path like you have?
Absolutely. So for us, one of the advices the biggest advice I can give is go tour a few near you. Always welcome to schedule and come tour with us and see our space. But ours lent with what we had. We were able to retrofit with what we had. So your answer won't be the same as my answer. It might even be better. Great. Um, if you have a good relationship with an animal providing partner in your area, do it with them. They're already the expert on the pets, and let them guide you. There's no way I will ever be an expert on dog and cats, but I'm thrilled that the experts are part of it with us. And don't be scared to start smaller. We just got our first canine companion, which is a huge part of having the dog in our facility. And maybe you start there with getting your staff comfortable with having a pet on site, and then build.
Everything that you just said, I have in the safety startup manual, because that's great advice. And there are so many shelters now that are coming on board with this. I think the latest number, we're at like 327 that I've been able to confirm.
That's great.
In 46 states and 6 countries. So, there's opportunities, even if it's just picking up the phone and saying, hey, hey, Safe Light, what did you do with this? What did you do with that? And I do get a fair number of shelters contacting me and saying, hey, here's our setup. And, this is what we're thinking of. Who would be a good match they've done this sort of housing model. And
Yeah.
I kind of feel like a shelter matchmaker some days. So
Good. Yeah. And
yeah,
we have 2 North Carolina agencies, just because we put it out there as a success and we're doing it, that are coming to tour to just what'd you do? What's the process?
yeah.
And there is federal funding around it right now. And of course, Red Rover, as well as a support. Just figure out. I will tell you, when I first told my board 2 or 3 years ago that I was going to write a grant for $60,000 for a kennel build in our facility, they laughed, thinking that was super expensive. Well, in hindsight, it ended up being about $150,000, but it was 100% grant funded.
Yeah.
And additionally, we have some room naming opportunities that we've gotten sponsored in the space to help with some financial growth. So it's just a great opportunity to think about how you can grow your capacity to better serve your survivors.
Yeah. And what is so interesting that I cannot say for any other industry, there is not a lack of money for this. It's, on the safety program website, there is a list of funding opportunities. There's federal funding, and what part of the working commission that I'm on with the federal government is I want to see new shelters get the grants, because we see a lot of the same shelters get the federal funding. I want to see new shelters get it. And even if it means like North Carolina comes together as a coalition, because it can be a lot to manage a federal grant, but you come together and everybody gets their part of the grant. There are ways to do it. But even in the communities love this. Like you said, the architect in your community, pro bono on their services. And I just find that communities love this. And if you give them an opportunity to do anything, whether it's donating supplies or gift cards, because you got to run out and you got to get cat litter or pet food or whatever, there's just not a shortage of money. It's just nowhere to go. So yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's one thing that I really try to alleviate shelters' concerns about. I'm like, okay, just, take a leap of faith. The money is there. You can apply for it, or you can just, go through your community and watch the money and the supplies and the donations come in. And all the shelters tell me, they're like, wow, you were really right about
And I'm
that.
not going after either of those grants again, because we're built, we're set. Like
Yeah.
now it's just keeping up with our partnership and making sure, we have enough funding to support that ongoing vaccine food support, which is pretty small through the year. I mean,
Mhm.
and then internally, of course, if there's other opportunities to grow our staffing to do more of the training and involvement, we'd want that. But I don't need another 100,000 on a build. We're done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Lauren, thank you so much for talking to me and sharing this, because, other shelters are going to listen, to this episode. And, I just hope it helps them understand that, yeah, this can be done. This absolutely can be done. And it's just, I was so excited to see the photos and to learn what you all had done. And so, kind of a pause, high five, to all that you've done, and just the amazing work. I mean, it just,
We have a great team that
thank
also
you.
said yes with me. So they held out when, we've got a lot of extra things going on and higher numbers, and they're still yes. And because we care and we just want to help the best way we can. So
Yeah.
shout out to all the Safe Flight staff
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Blue Ridge Humane Society,
Yeah.
incredible partner.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. They have just been there for you. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing, uh, the good and the difficult, and that you are solution driven and you're making this happen. So thank you so much. Very,
Thank
very
you.
inspiring.
Thank
So, yep. All right. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. We appreciate you being here.
If you are in harm's way and need help, please visit the Pet Inclusive Shelter listing at safetyprogram.org, call your nearest domestic violence shelter, or call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Want to support our efforts and help us keep the Safety Startup Manual free for domestic violence shelters? Consider donating at safetyprogram.org/donate. Your donation saves lives.